Lamar Jackson, average draft position, is around 38. That's around the start of the 4th round, coming off a knee PCL strain that was in December. Tom, what do you think his outlook is here, coming into the 2023 season?
Lamar's one that we talked a lot about at the end of last season because his injury was kind of downplayed, I think, by people in the Ravens media and just people covering them and trying to predict how Lamar was going to perform after. But we talked the whole time about how concerning that was for his return last season because the PCL, it can be slow to heal, but also it's very easy for it to get re-aggravated in the same season. Last season, we were very concerned for the rest of his season outlook, but this year is totally different. I mean, he's had a whole entire offseason to rehab, which is absolutely crucial for someone like Lamar Jackson, who's so agile and constantly cutting on a dime. All of that should be fine by now, and I don't expect any lingering issue from this. And if we think about his injury history in general, so last week's show, which if you haven't listened to, go back and listen to it, we talk all about what the medical research says about attempting to, I don't like to use the word predict, but understand if a player is at a higher risk for injury. The number one thing is prior injury. So I'm not overly concerned about Lamar Jackson's situation going into this upcoming season.
But yeah, Tom, I'm not worried either, but just his last couple seasons, let's take a look from a fantasy perspective, right? Can't forget, a couple of years back, 2019, boys, he was the MVP, right? Last 3 years has not returned value on that at all. 2020 finished as quarterback 10, missed a game. 2021 missed 5.5 games, finished as the quarterback 15. 2022 last year finished as the quarterback 14. He's great, but I mean, aside from that one MVP season, of course he's good, but he hasn't returned value. But listen, for this year, I do like him, at least at his ADP. I'm not going to reach for him. I think it's fair where he's going, right? He's got the injuries. Since 2019, there's been a big decline in his passing attempts. They always talk about cutting back on the rushing attempts, right? Like, we want to keep him around, keep him safe. I don't know what to make of it because there's all these positives, but then there's also those red flags. Zach, what do you think about Lamar for this year, man? Do you feel it's a fair ADP for him, QB5?
Yeah, I mean, obviously QB5 is a pretty significant investment, but anybody who talks to me too long will find out that I'm a Lamar truther of sorts. I don't really know how or why I'm a Patriots fan, but have somewhat grabbed onto Lamar as like, I don't know, my ideal quarterback or something like that. Just behind Joe Burrow, above Justin Fields. I think he's a better passer than Fields and just as good of a runner. So to me, that makes sense. Even just from a rushing standpoint, you could worry that perhaps he would drop in rushing yardage and everything overall now with the new system going in and then passing more. But he's actually more productive on scrambles than he is on designed runs, which is really interesting. Now, I don't remember the numbers, but that's a significant thing. Obviously, scrambles happening on pass plays. When Lamar doesn't see anything, it's either going to be open because of the new receivers that he has, or it's not going to be there and he's going to run and he's going to get you some yardage that way. So I don't really see too much of a hit to his rushing coming down, but I see his passing volume going up significantly. So I think it's pretty fair personally, but again, I'm biased for whatever reason. So
again, I truthfully do think it's fair. I'm not taking him over, of course, Hurts or Mahomes or Allen, Justin Fields right in that mix right there. Again, I think it's fair. He's going to give you that floor every single week. Tom seems to not be overly concerned about the injury. Again, talked a little bit about it. Should be okay. So I think it's fair. I'm not going out of my way to get Lamar, but I'm happy if he falls to me 5th round, late 4th round, whatever it might be. To a T. So he's going off a little bit later. He's QB 11 right now. ADP's around 90, so that's going to be around the 8th round there. Multiple pretty severe concussions. I mean, we talked a lot last year about how scary it was and so many different aspects to these concussions. Tom, what do you think his outlook is, at least from an injury perspective, for this coming year?
There's definitely cause for concern. So I talked to our good friend Andrew Tierketter, who is a concussion and neuro specialist. And basically what we were talking about is within the nervous system, so the brain and the nerves, we'll talk about some more of that with another player coming up. When there's a prior injury, it takes less of a threshold, so less of a forceful hit for a subsequent injury to occur. And oftentimes that subsequent injury is more symptomatic than the prior one. So that's why we see when players have multiple concussions, they end up typically missing more and more time. It takes longer for them to progress through the concussion protocol on the subsequent concussions because the brain is more sensitive at that point. It takes less of a hit for concussion symptoms to come on, and they are typically more pronounced now. But again, impossible to predict if he's going to have a concussion, if his line can protect him well, if he can protect himself well, if they can scheme properly for him to not take any big hits. He could play the whole season, and he could play very well. I don't expect any drop in production because of his concussion history. The concern is it's more likely that he's going to have another concussion than if he didn't have this history.
Literally, his brain and head almost is injury prone now, just to simplify kind of what that's kind of what you were saying. And
yeah, that's a very layman's term way to put it.
That's what I do out here. Can't pronounce Tua's last name, but I'll tell you the easiest way to understand his injury history.
But insofar as how he's going to play, if he's healthy, I think he's an easy top 10. I don't, just having Waddle and Hill and that offense there, he's obviously going to put up numbers. Now, we did see a decline a bit, but a lot of that was after one of the concussions that he had. And I mean, in that one game, he had like 3 picks after having that weird hit that we saw.
I think there's a lot of positives here. I mean, really, you take a look, Miami's offense, guys, it could be one of the best in football. Tua himself, right? I mean, he saw some really big games last year, was kind of in stretches. So I'm a little bit worried about like his consistency. He did have that huge 6-touchdown game, but a couple just stats for you guys to think about. Led the league in passing yards per attempt. He led the league in passing yards on play action. And last year is ADOT. Those of you guys that don't know, that's average depth of target, how far he's throwing the ball down the field. It spiked like crazy last year. So that's where I'm actually kind of hitting the brakes now, because I'm actually a little bit worried. The big plays happen. Can't take them away. But I'm worried that him and that offense last year relied a lot on those big plays. And that's where a lot of Tua's success did come from. Granted, you have Tyreek Hill and Waddle who could take a slant like we just said to the house. But I'm worried about that. I think we could see a little bit regression there. And again, last year with the injuries, missed 4 games, finished as QB 15, a little bit inconsistent. I think it's a fair ADP, guys. I don't know.